What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at the seminal 1954 sci-fi horror classic In Them, the story about giant mutated killer ants that terrorize the city of Los Angeles. The film is directed by Gordon Douglas, written for the screen by Ted Schriedman, and all right, let's talk about them. Overall, I thought this is a very, very good uh, cheesy B movie of the 1950s. Now, this movie is absurd and it is cheesy from a plot and premise. I mean, at the end of the day, it's giant killer ants terrorizing a city. How can that not be ridiculously goofy and cheesy? But what makes this movie work is that the production team and the cast took this story completely and utterly serious, and they played this movie totally straight. And that's, to me, what makes this movie works. The absurd premise works because the cast took the material totally straight, and you believed that these giant killer ants are a world threat. They took it. That just goes to show you the talent that was going on in the mid 50s when the sci-fi boom was really happening, and you're getting all these ridiculous movies that have to deal with like nuclear fallout and stuff like that. You get these goofy, over-the-top premises, but sometimes you get actors who just don't take the material seriously enough for the audience to be invested, and it ends up being played for laughs and as just pretty much self-parody and satire in a way. Them is one of those movies that does not cross that border because the actors take the material totally straight and it works. And when you have world-class actors like James Whitmore and James Arness in this film, you're gonna get you're gonna get serious performance like Whitmore and Arness for the time these guys were like in the main were big actors. These guys were not your typical A-list actors. These are B-list actors. These were like men's men type of actors. They look gruff, they look weathered, and they looked like real they looked like real people. And that's, to me, again, that's what makes this movie works. You have James Whitmore, who plays a police sergeant named Peterson, and you have James Arness, who plays an FBI agent named Graham. To me, these two pretty much hold this movie together, and it's their teamwork along with a father-daughter science team that really gives this movie a grounded sense, and absolutely makes this premise sound as realistic as humanly possible without bordering into comedic territory. And again, I have to give praise to the cast. Like I said, I thought everyone in this movie played their roles exceptionally well. Whitmore and Arness, to me, are the two standouts. I thought their chemistry on screen was really, really good, and they worked really well off one another. Now, the father-daughter science team, who are Pat and her father, whose name I can't remember, they played their roles really, really well too, and they gelled extremely well with Whitmore and Arness in this movie. And these are the four characters that you really paid the most attention to because they are our four main characters. And they're the most interesting characters in the whole movie because they're pretty much our eyes and ears into this world. So from an acting standpoint, I thought the four of them did a fantastic job. From a production standpoint, this is a really well done movie for its time. These special effects on these giant ants look incredible. They look like Godzilla, only at a more human level. Like these ants reach to about 7 to 12 feet tall, I believe they said, which they're ginormous. Like they're extraordinarily ginormous, and they do come across as very, very intimidating and very, very violent. And again, the special effects work on the giant ants, they look fantastic. They look as realistic can be. Gordon Douglas's directing is very rock solid. I thought he did a great job behind the camera. This movie's got really good cinematography. Again, the story is completely absurd and over the top and ridiculous, but like I said, the writing is very grounded, and the performances really make this movie stand out and to be taken seriously because the actors do not take bulky material and they make it work. Not only do the actors make it work, as I keep mentioning throughout this review, because number one, in a movie like this, the acting has to work and they have to take the material seriously in order for a premise like this to work. But not only that, you have top-notch special effects at the time that make the giant ants look like a believable and life and world-threatening violence to itself as well. Not only that, this is actually one of those few movies from the 1950s that actually showed some pretty violent imagery. Like when we see a giant ant, we see like pretty much a boneyard. We see a giant ant nibbling on a rib cage. We see human skulls that are being cracked by the giant ant. It looks all gnarly and gory, and for its time, innovative stuff. I enjoyed that a lot. This is also one of those movies that, at the end, puts a bunch of little kids in danger, and the Peterson character pretty much sacrifices himself to save those kids, to save the kids. Which, I liked Peterson all throughout this movie. He was one of my favorite characters, along with the Graham character. So for his character to kind of bite the dust, I mean, yeah, it was a bummer, but it was a hero sacrifice, and it works, and it kind of plays into him, his whole thing that he was doing at the beginning of the movie, where he and his partner find this little girl who had come into contact with the giant ants, and pretty much left her in a near comatose state. So I like how that little thing pays off for these two other kids who come into contact with the giant ants, and he ends up having to save them, while Graham and the military pretty much destroy the entire ant colony as they're trying to look for a potential queen in the pretty much in the abandoned subways, in the abandoned tunnels of L.A., which is actually a really thrilling scene. Like the whole third act of this movie is actually pretty cool, and I enjoyed it a lot. Very, very thrilling stuff. It's good stuff. This movie does have scenes where it can be padded in a lot of areas. It does have some characters that are introduced who don't really do anything for me. They're just too crazy patient. They're just too like mental patients who don't do much. And I would have taken those two scenes out because I don't really think they add anything. That's me personally. But other than that, I think this movie is, for the most part, very tightly paced. It is edge of your seat. It's never boring. It's never boring. This movie does keep your interest, and it works for me as a whole. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on them. I'm gonna give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.